and just keep in mind that there's like endless possibilities what you can do with bamboo if you respect the material. And so that is kind of my underlying message to most people, is like, learn about the material, understand its strength, but also its weaknesses, right? Some people, they want to force bamboo to do crazy things that it's just not meant to do. And then the structure fails, or it's just not a success. And then that puts, again, a negative connotation to bamboo. And then it's like, oh, this material doesn't work, and it degrades so quickly. But it's not up to the bamboo, it's up to us utilizing the bamboo the way it should be utilized. To respect it, you have to design and build with it in a way that it will last. And then the lifespan of that structure could have the same lifespan as a wooden structure.
Hello, welcome to another episode of the Pencils Down podcast. This is Tahmid.
This is Martita.
And this is Jess. We're very excited to kick off our fall season with Vinc Math. He's a bamboo consultant from Germany based in New York. He has an extensive experience working with bamboo. He has built numerous structures all over the world and enjoys sharing his knowledge with others, conducting workshops and lectures. We were very lucky to get him as a guest because our very own Martita was working with him this summer. So she got us the in to have this wonderful conversation with him.
So this summer I had a really cool opportunity to work in an art installation here in Columbus. There is a program here called Exhibit Columbus, and they aim to bring the community together in many different ways. So this summer they were building different art and architecture installations. So I responded to a call out of building a structure made out of bamboo. So I thought it was fascinating to have that opportunity to do that here in the city. And as an architecture student, I was extremely excited to be part of it. So this is where I met Vinc, and I met a lot of different people that were producing bamboo, and other people that were just volunteering, that wanted to get involved in this important event that we have in the community. So it was really interesting to understand how bamboo works as a material, how to work with it. We were building it from scratch. We were cutting bamboo, we were drilling it, we were putting the pieces together, we were painting it. So I thought it was really fascinating how we get to know about a material when we are actually working with it. So then I heard about Vinc's story, and I thought that his experience working with bamboo was fascinating. So I thought it would be amazing to engage in a conversation to hear more about him.
Hi Vinc, thank you for being here with us today. So you're doing a project here in Columbus, which is a part of the Exhibit Columbus that's happening here in town. Can you tell us a little bit about your project?
Sure. So the project here in Columbus is actually a collaboration between myself and Studio Zewde, a landscape firm in New York. They approached me to make this project potentially happening with bamboo. And so I'm a bamboo consultant, and I basically said, yeah, we can try to do this. And we changed some of the design a little bit to make it match the material. And ultimately it led to this project here. So it's the project for Exhibit Columbus, and it's a pretty large structure. I think it's one of the largest installations they've done here so far. It's about 200 feet in width and 60 feet in 200 feet in length and about 60 feet in width. So it's a pretty large structure that kind of represents the hill that's in Millrace Park. And the idea is, so it's called the Echoes of the Hill. So it's the two hills facing each other. And yeah, it's just been a great project and great to see it come to life.
Yeah, I was riding my bike in the Millrace Park this morning on my way to here. And yes, it is a large and a very impressive bamboo structure. I was wondering if you can give us a little bit of a background on how you started working with bamboo and your experience with working with this material.
I'm from Germany, so I'm a woodworker. I was taught there, fine woodworking. It's a kind of a long process to get your degree, and you work many years with a company to become a woodworker or furniture maker, depending on what direction you're going into. And that's my background. So I started in Germany as a woodworker, very focused on square, lumber, dimensioned. Everything is kind of, very precise and just you're trying to make everything match perfectly. And I was hired by a company in Ethiopia, and they were trying to do engineered bamboo products. So bamboo flooring, bamboo particle boards, bamboo, they're called woven strand boards, which is you literally take the bamboo, you crush it up, and you glue it back together. And that was my entryway into the bamboo world, which I didn't really know what was coming to me. I was just going there to set up this factory to help, make this product. And there were two instrumental people in my journey. One is Felix Böck. He now does a company that is called Chop Value. They actually press used chopsticks into planks like that. Definitely check him out. And then my other mentor, who does more of the kind of work that I do now, is Jörg Stamm. He really builds massive structures and schools and bridges out of bamboo. So I met him in Africa, and we basically couldn't do all the manufacturing we wanted to because there was a delay in the machinery coming in. And ultimately that led to me going into the fields with Jörg, my mentor, and us building stuff. And so this was my first hands-on, actually building with bamboo. Now, Ethiopia has very small bamboo. It's nothing to the size that I work with now. I mean, I don't really work with just one size, but it was very small bamboo. So the applications were limited to, single, maybe double-story houses, basic, storage facilities and so on. And it was just an intense couple of years, just kind of getting to know the material, working with the locals, understanding what can you do with it. And from there on, it led to me just doing more and more bamboo work, and then ending up in Southeast Asia, working for one of the biggest bamboo construction. It's a company, but also a design team. It's Ibuku and PT Bamboo. They've built a green school and massive structures. So I was very fortunate to work with them. We developed some furnitures for them, but then also improved some of the structural systems and just the craftsmanship. So, and that led to me starting my consultancy and ultimately training people kind of around the globe, building these projects that happen. People have wishes, they want to build certain projects, and I can help them realize that. It starts from finding the bamboo to treating it, to teaching the people how to actually work with it, and then executing the work. So it's brought me all over the place. I mean, some of the bigger projects I did were in Hong Kong and Sri Lanka and obviously Bali, Indonesia, other parts of Indonesia. So it's an interesting journey of how bamboo brings you around.
Yeah. So while we were talking earlier, you were mentioning some of the unique challenges that this material creates here in the US. Can you reflect on that a bit?
Yeah. So, I mean, bamboo construction is a very new thing. It's not something the material has been around for thousands of years, right? It's not a new material in that aspect. But that knowledge that we have with bamboo or had with bamboo has been kind of lost over the last few centuries, probably. If you look at, and this is something that's really interesting, just kind of looking at why that happened. It's because when the industrial revolution happened, most of the things that were kind of new and hip and that were used, like metal and glass and aluminum, that all stayed within the Western Hemisphere. And if you look at where bamboo is native to, it's all basically the Southern Hemisphere. Bamboo has been seen as kind of this cheap material, the poor man's timber they call it, or it doesn't seem to add value to our Western kind of look at materials. And that is something that probably led to us losing all this knowledge. Because in countries where there is actually bamboo that is native to those areas, people don't want to build with bamboo because it doesn't represent wealth. That's actually a big challenge, and I face that all over and all the time in my work, because people see it and they're hesitant. They don't know why are you building with bamboo when this is something that we're trying to get rid of it or not. We just use this for like fences or firewood and so on. And so pushing the design on that aspect really helps elevate the material. So the more luxury buildings you build, the better the material is represented. And so this is really where it's fascinating to see that kind of development over the last couple of years even. And so you have the same here in the US. There is bamboo. It is just not
Well
known,
represented.
right? It's not well known, first of all, that there is bamboo, and then it's not really well represented because nobody really has done anything with it. So for me, it's exciting to see more bamboo projects happening here, because when the US does something, the whole world kind of looks at it and wants to do more of it, right? It's like a global stage. Or let's say Europe does something, everybody wants to follow. I don't necessarily agree with that kind of system, but it is just how the world works right now.
Yeah.
And to me, that's fascinating. And to me, it's interesting because bamboo has so many good properties, from the way it grows, the way it sustains itself, the plant itself, all the positive things, the sustainability to it, how it helps the soil retain water and help irrigation, and the list is really long. And seeing that kind of become more interesting to people, landscape architects alone, to use that material, even people making furniture out of it, that is just exciting. And that's one way to get into the bamboo industry. So furniture is great, bamboo flooring is great because it's all standardized. Now construction is going to be a little bit more challenging because you require building codes, you require permits, you require engineered calculations, and all those things are really difficult to do with bamboo because it's such a non-standardized material. It grows very different. Every pole is unique and different. The wall thickness, the length, the spacing of the nodes, the age, like all that plays into it, which makes it really difficult for this kind of standardized system. But for me as a craftsman, that is a really exciting part, because I've worked with standardized materials and I've worked with unstandardized materials. And as soon as you go into an unstandardized material, it really becomes a challenge. And to me as a craftsman, that is fun. Like, I can put my own unique skills to it to make that work, much rather than taking a square piece of lumber and laminating it together. So there's a real craftsmanship to it. And so this is why it fascinates me, and that's why I've been doing this kind of work, because I really see how people react to it. When you go into a bamboo structure that is well built, it's an inviting space, it's a very quality space, it makes you feel like grounded. And so bamboo really has that kind of property. Now, going back to your question, sorry, I kind of drifted off.
Perfect.
But building with bamboo in the US is going to be, or is challenging, because anything that you want to do permanently is going to require permits, it's going to require calculations. And people are working on it. There's a lot of research that is being done to make all that work. It's probably still going to take some time. So you look at the wood industry, we have been building with wood for centuries, right? And that has been always tested and studied, and probably the first wooden structures weren't as great as they are now, right? So there's an evolvement to it. Kind of every material has had its steps to evolve. Metal, concrete, like all that needed testing, right? It just takes time. And we're just starting that with bamboo, right? The last 20 years, let's say. But it takes time, like testing it, understanding it, finding standards for it. And so since we're in this kind of evolving stage of like, what can we do with bamboo? I think, to me, the best approach is to just do stuff with it and actually use that as a case study. So this project here in Columbus is a great case study, because I'm not aware of anything that was built this big, or with the span that has been done. And so it's exciting to be part of that, because you can actually showcase, look, bamboo can really span 200 meters or 60 meters at the column lengths. And it has the ability to do that. It's just people are not aware of it, right? And so it's kind of just this entryway of what can you do with bamboo. And so our art installations are a great way to do stuff here in the US with maybe small structures that, you know, can slowly be adopted into local jurisdictions and local building codes. But it's a bit of a slow process, but seeing something come up in, for example, here in Columbus, it's just exciting. Like, I'm hoping that more people get excited by this and look into the opportunity. What can I do? How can I replace some material with potentially bamboo? And I always say, like, we don't have to go extreme. We don't have to build entire houses just out of bamboo. It doesn't have to be. It's very difficult. It's beautiful, but it's very difficult. But if you can just replace one other material with bamboo, if it's decorative, if it's structural, if it's furniture, that's already in a way more sustainable. Obviously, it depends on what you're building and how you're building. But this structure would have potentially been built out of metal. Yeah. So the offset of metal to bamboo is huge, you know. And this is local bamboo from the U.S. It comes from Georgia, so it's all it has barely traveled any distance. It just came here from Georgia, and that, I mean, what else do you want me to say? That's the best way to build with local materials, right?
Yes.
And so I would incentivize a lot of people to just kind of see, you know, you don't have to do everything out of it, but if you can just replace a small portion of your design, of your structure, of your concept with bamboo, or even just prototyping with it, it's already a win-win for the world, for the people, for the material, for the industry. There's so many pluses.
Yes, of course, it makes sense. As you were saying to us earlier, that this project was initially planned to be made out of steel, which does have a high embodied energy. Whereas now, since this will be made out of locally resourced bamboo, it's going to have way less environmental impact and be more sustainable in long run.
Yeah.
I hope so.
I wanted to ask you a little more about why bamboo and what are the advantages now that you were used to work with wood and now you're working with bamboo. What are the advantages of this material compared to other natural materials?
I'd say, to me, I can compare it best to wood, because that is what I know and what I used to work with, or I still work with wood. I think there are two different mindsets. And when I work with wood, I turn on a different kind of thinking than when I work with bamboo. When you work with bamboo, you're ultimately working with hollow tubes, right? And so that way of thinking and way of designing is very different than when I do wooden construction or furniture or something like that. It just changes. It's fundamentally different. Bamboo has a lot of good sides in terms of the plant, how it grows. It's sustainable. It helps soil erosion, and it stops, you know, it. If you look into it, and I mean, I couldn't mention all of them, but it's just, we're going to try to stay within architecture. Like, bamboo has this ability to be flexible but stiff at the same time. So it has incredible natural properties that other materials have, but not all in one. You know, so bamboo is flexible but stiff. It's got a high tensile strength. It's got that ability to be, you know, the lower section can be used for really like stiff parts. The top part is more flexible. Just how the bamboo grows. There are a lot of structural properties that you can do with bamboo in areas that are, you know, earthquake affected or have natural disasters, and the bamboo is able to take that kind of vibration, which most other structures wood has some abilities to do that, but it's still very stiff depending on how it is being built. And then it's also just the availability. Like, in a lot of countries, you have a lot of bamboo. It's just being abandoned. It's not being utilized. And they're actually importing other materials to build with, if that is glass or aluminum or steel. And ultimately, that is a huge carbon offset. I mean, a huge carbon impact. Importing stuff when you actually have a local resource that you can build with. And so, to me, there's the sustainable factor, and then there's the craftsman factor. So building with bamboo just has this unique challenge, like I mentioned. It's just so much fun to have that challenge and take a material and look at the material and analyze it and then use that, much rather than a piece of wood. You can plane it, you can dimension it, and you can do that hundreds of times, and it's always going to be repetitive and the same. So the way of thinking is just very different. But I do have to mention that bamboo also has its downsides. It's not a perfect material, and I'm not trying to sell bamboo to everything because it doesn't work for everything. It's got its downside like every other material has, right? It's a hollow tube, so there's always the risk of it basically buckling or compressing and basically breaking. It's also quite sensitive to sunlight, like UV light. If you leave bamboo, and wood has that as well, but bamboo is even more sensitive. So if you leave bamboo out just on its own, just out on a field, let's say, it will weather very quickly. It will start cracking. It will start being if it's in a wet environment, it will start to rot, the same as wood does, and it just kind of bleaches out from the sun. So the sun will break down the fibers, and so the key to bamboo construction is always to design with it really well, because then you don't have any, or you're avoiding future issues in your structure. And it's with everything, with every other material. It's just that some materials are more sensitive than others. So bamboo really has the ability to do a lot of things, but you have to know how to use it. Mm-hmm. And that is, to me, that's not a negative thing. It's simply just like understanding what you're building with. So you want to have a big roof over it, so you protect it from the rain and from the sunlight. You want to have a good foundation, so it doesn't sit in moisture and it sits on like a dry foundation that keeps it dry. And then you want to treat the bamboo as well. So bamboo actually has a lot of sugar, and it's very attractive to insects, depending on where you are, the different insects. But generally, it's always recommended to treat your bamboo. But the treatment is very simple. It's simply just a soak. You soak the bamboo in a borate solution, and that treats your bamboo. And so all of these things are necessary to do that, which oftentimes is like, oh, it's so much work. And it is a lot of work, but to me, it's always worth the work, because I feel like that big offset that we have, not just the environmental impact, but also teaching people how to work with it, kind of enlightening them, and then just the feel of a bamboo structure it's just different. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure how to exactly explain it, but there's these two fundamental things between standardized materials and non-standardized materials, and it's just I see myself drift towards the unstandardized materials just to have that challenge. And it's not always easy, but it's a fun way of expressing, new architecture, new styles of materials, and that always involves the design, the architecture, the feel of a structure, the flow of a structure. So, yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about some of the joinery system with your experience with bamboo?
Joinery with bamboo is, again, two different mindsets. A wooden joinery is what we know. So a lot of people know lumber, a lot of people know concrete and steel. Steel can be welded, wood can be joined and screwed and glued together. Bamboo is a little bit more challenging. Again, like I said, you work with round tubes. So that is not something that we're, as of how our educational system works, and the architecture system, and even the woodworking system, like we just don't think about working with round poles, because everything has been so squared, and even if you look at designs are generally boxes. Like our houses are all boxes, right? So that all kind of relates back. So working with a round material has its challenges. So you can't just take two pieces of bamboo and like literally just butt them up and screw them together or glue them together. That's very challenging. You have to look at the bamboo and actually know what is the stronger part of it and what is the weaker part of it. So you have these internodes of, when you look at a bamboo pole, it has these internodes that start really close together on the bottom and then space out more and more toward the top. And those nodes are actually the most stable part. That's where the bamboo is solid. Like that section, that small tiny section is solid. Everything else is hollow. And that is always a good indicator where you can join bamboo. So it's not like you can screw it you can screw it anywhere, but the risk of that joint failing is higher when it is not on a node or by a node. And so when we select material, you want to look for nodes, and ultimately that requires a certain amount of bamboo just to have that flexibility. There are different joinery methods that, depending on the style, you can use certain techniques that are called, for example, like a fish mouth. It's basically the tenon and mortise connection in woodworking. The fish mouth connection is kind of the equivalent for bamboo. Like you just have one pole resting on the other, and then that is, you're taking advantage of the bamboo actually supporting itself. There are bolt connections where you drill a hole through the bamboo and bolt them together. There's a bamboo nail connection, so I'd like to make my nails also out of bamboo. So it just utilizes all the cutoffs of the bamboo that you can use, and it doesn't require any other material, and they work well together. When you use bamboo and bamboo, they shrink and expand at the same rate, whereas if you use another material, it impacts that. So bamboo dowels or bamboo nails is a great way to join bamboo. And then there's no standard system. Like it really depends on your design and your ultimate goal that you want to achieve, and there are certain techniques that work really well for certain applications. Bamboo is also very great at being cut up and made into like splits, like little slats, and those are incredibly flexible. So you can create grid shells with that, domes, like woven kind of partitions. So it's got its utilities in different aspects. It's a full pole, which is what I prefer to do, like construction with the full pole, and then there's also splits, and you can cut those splits really small and ultimately make like very fine strands of bamboo that you can utilize for bundling or weaving or furniture, like different aspects of your structure. So it's got a lot of applications. It's just understanding how to do it, and that it is not just as easy as going to the supermarket, the grocery store, or not the grocery store, sorry, to the hardware store. That's the term I was looking for. To the hardware store and buying, a piece of lumber. It's just not that easy. And again, some people love it, some people hate it. It's a challenge, but it's kind of, you either love it or you hate it. So I just hope that more people kind of, just learn about bamboo, maybe even work with it, prototype with it, and you'll know. If you don't like it, there's no harm, right? But if it intrigues you and you kind of want to learn more, you're hooked. And you see that with a lot of people that work in the bamboo industry. Like Bamboo it pulls you in and you want to explore more and realize, like, what can you do? Like, how can you push boundaries with it? And other people are like, maybe not my line.
It's really interesting that you mentioned that, because I get it as working with bamboo becomes like a more personal experience with the material.
Yeah. I mean, I see it in a lot of people also, depending on where they're from and how they relate to it. So a lot of my, Asian friends or Southeast Asians, they relate back to it as, something native, something they've always had around them, but just never realized what can they do with it. And there's a lot of to me there's a lot of personal aspect, because I've been working with this material for more than 10 years, and I've traveled the world with it, and I have my experiences that way. But yeah, everyone who kind of works with it has some sort of personal connection at some point. Even if it's just attending a workshop and doing something with it, or having an experience like in a bamboo forest or something like that. Like, bamboo is really in itself a magical plant, and if you look at it and what it does and how it does most of the things it does really well. And it's just surprising to me that we haven't discovered it earlier or pushed for that earlier.
Yeah, and also us as international students and architecture students, I feel like we don't know enough about bamboo to consider it for our project. So I wanted to ask you about some of the most significant projects that you've worked on, so we can take a look at that and take them as an example and as a reference to see the things that we can actually do with bamboo, because since we don't really know the material, we don't really consider it as an option.
Yeah, this is a tricky one, because there have been some amazing bamboo structures built in the world, up to 6 stories, and bridges, and that bamboo that is available there is huge. It's got very different dimensions in terms of what you can find in the US. So just to mention a few, and what I don't want is to throw people off, because if you don't have the same material, it's going to be hard to build these kind of structures. But it is an incentive to kind of help, look at different aspects. What can I do with bamboo? How can I do it? And it doesn't need to be this scale or this extreme, like just using bamboo for everything. So there's the design from Ibuku. in Bali, Indonesia. They've been pioneering the bamboo construction sector for the last 15 years. It's like the bamboo mecca of the bamboo construction. Like it's an incredible area. They've built an entire school out of bamboo. There's an entire village built of bamboo where one of the largest structures is. It's a 6-story residential house. It's really a playground where you can play with bamboo and learn from it and do stuff with it. There's a course there that they teach. It's called the Bamboo course. They do an online version and an in-person version. I'm a facilitator there actually, and I help teach there. That is very inspirational. But again, everything they do there is not applicable. Most of the things are not applicable to what you can do probably in the US, but that doesn't mean we can't push for it. There's some other cool projects that I was involved in. One is the ZCB, so zero carbon building is the term. ZCB Bamboo Pavilion in Hong Kong. That was a very kind of pushing the limits in terms of the span and the size and even just the permitting, because Hong Kong does have very strict building codes. So we pushed all of that through, and it was built, and it was a huge success in terms of just showing what you can do. There's some other projects that resorts and hotels that I've done in Sri Lanka and Sumatra and in the Middle East even. So there's a lot out there, and there's not just me. There's so many other people that do stuff with bamboo, and I would incentivize you to go on the internet, kind of look up what people do, and just keep in mind that there's like endless possibilities what you can do with bamboo if you respect the material. And so that is kind of my underlying message to most people, is like, learn about the material, understand its strength but also its weaknesses, right? Some people, they want to force bamboo to do crazy things that it's just not meant to do, and then the structure fails or it's just not a success, and then that puts again a negative connotation to bamboo, and then it's like, oh, this material doesn't work and it degrades so quickly. But it's not up to the bamboo, it's up to us utilizing the bamboo the way it should be utilized, right? So it's like, you can't just take a piece of wood and expect it to fly, for example, right? So bamboo it's the same expectation. You have to treat the bamboo, you have to respect it, you have to design and build with it in a way that it will last, and then the lifespan of that structure could have the same lifespan as a wooden structure.
Yeah, actually, I also wanted to ask you about that, because this installation that we have here in Columbus, it's supposed to be here for 6 months, but
3 months, yeah.
Looking at your work, we've seen that you work with more permanent bamboo buildings. So what could you tell us about that?
I mean, most projects that I try to do are permanent structures. It's just, I love it. I love seeing the structure kind of progress and even age over the years. I also think it has a bigger impact, because when people start living in a bamboo building and that word travels and people are like, wow, this is really nice, maybe I want to build with bamboo too, it has a much bigger impact than doing an art installation. Now, not to say that I don't think the art installation has any impact at all. I think here in the US, it's the best entryway to enter, like, what can I do with bamboo? The best way is to do an art installation, because you are not going to be able to permit a permanent construction. But with an art installation, you can still draw people in, make them excited about the material, and ultimately show them what is possible. And maybe that will help us push the boundaries a little bit more. So the project here in Columbus is up for 3 months or 3.5 months. And it's not how I would ever do permanent construction. It doesn't have a foundation. It doesn't have a cover. It's out in the elements. It's going to be snowed on, rained on. But that is not the issue for that kind of purpose. So the art installation, it's still better than using steel, because steel would be removed and would end up in a landfill very likely. And that would be sad. That bamboo can just be composted or reused for another project if there is something. And so the lifespan really depends on what you do with it. So the permanent construction requires, like I said, a roof and treatment and a good foundation and a good design. These structures can really last a long time. I mean, there's some older bamboo structures that have been around for many, many years. And in my opinion, if you treat a structure, if you maintain a structure, it will last you a lifetime. And a lifetime could mean 100 years, but it could also mean 1,000 years. It depends on how you define a lifetime, right? If you look at wooden construction, there's maintenance that needs to be done. It needs to be repainted. It needs to be, certain pieces need to be replaced. And it's the exact same with bamboo. Like it just requires some maintenance. It requires some love, like every material does. You have concrete construction, you have metal construction. They all need maintenance. If it's painting or replacement, or it's just that the interval of maintenance is probably a little bit different for certain materials. Bamboo is a high maintenance material, which means you constantly have to look at your structure and assess it, and if there's something wrong, you replace that. Generally, that's not a big deal. It goes very quickly, it's very easy to do, and again, the material is affordable, it is cheap, it is sustainable, and it's easy to work with. So these things kind of, not easy to work with in terms of you have to know what you're doing, but it's basically easy to do to replace something. Like, it's not like in a metal structure you have to cut it out and weld it back in, whereas in bamboo you replace the piece, you undo the joinery and you put it back in. So it's all doable, obviously depending on the design also. But that maintenance that frequency of maintenance is something that I tell every client. Like, it's not just like something you finish and you walk away. It requires some maintenance, and I think that is a beautiful thing, to attend to your structure, especially if it's like a house that you live in. That's a beautiful thing. You attend your structure, you make sure that it's okay. You take care of it. It's almost like a child, right? You take care of it. You take care of each other as human beings, so you take care of the buildings too. So I like that aspect to it. And again, doing art installations, that may be a little bit different, but doing permanent construction, that is just that kind of mindset. So hopefully over the years we kind of have the opportunity to build more permanent with bamboo in the US. And the more we do that, the more universities get involved, the more people start to research the material and research the possibilities, the better it will be in the long run for us to actually be successfully building in the US with bamboo.
Yeah, so thank you so much for sharing your knowledge about working with bamboo. And I'm sure our audiences will get positively influenced about using bamboo as their as a construction material for their buildings or their projects. And yeah.
Perfect.
Also, if you could share with us if you have social media or a website so people can go through it and look at your work.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me. If anybody has any questions, you can reach out to me. The best is email. I'm kind of old school, but my email address is vinc@vincmath.com. So it's Vince without an E. So VINC@VINCMATH.com. Vince@vincmath.com. That's going to be the easiest. I am on Instagram. I think my link is Vinc Math. What else?
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
It was a pleasure for us to have you here, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for
very
having me. Yeah, I hope that we can do a lot more bamboo in the future.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Thank you for listening to the Pencils Down podcast. If you enjoyed this guest, we think that you'll really love the next one as well. Pencils Down is a space to engage in conversations about architecture and art. You'll hear other interviews with prominent architects and artists sharing their work, expertise, and knowledge in the field. If you're interested in architecture or the J. Irwin Miller Architecture Program, follow us on Instagram at IU Architecture. That's IU_architecture. Or on Facebook, you can find us at Indiana University J. Irwin Miller Architecture Program. Thank you so much and have a good day.